start. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session featuring our special guest. I'm from Microsoft, Sanjay, and Sanjay is from Microsoft Fabric Cat team, who's going to bring a wealth of knowledge on Fabric. I'm very excited that Sanjay has taken some time to speak to our group today regarding the Microsoft innovation in this space, and hope he'll able to simplify the direct lake for Fabric. Q&A. And for the Q&A, the chat is open. So in session, you can just type in your questions, and I'll try to help Sanjay to transcribe those questions. Um, and I want Sanjay to take a minute or two to introduce himself, his role at Microsoft, and give an overview what he aims to cover today. Floor is all yours, Sanjay. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much for getting me into providing this opportunity to, do a session with the community group. So very happy to be here. Just confirm if you can see my screen that I have shared, and we should be good to go.
Yep.
And I'll do my introduction as a part of my presentation itself, because that's also something I'll talk about.
Yep, we can see your presentation.
Awesome. Cool. So, hi guys, I'm Sanjay Raut. I'm part of Fabric Customer Advisory Team, Principal Program Manager on Fabric Customer Advisory Team. I have been working with data and with Microsoft for more than 2 decades, like almost 2 decades now. Have been long timer with Microsoft and on data. Started my journey with SQL Server 6.57-ish. And then from then on, still working in various different platforms, various different roles as well in Microsoft. So my analytics journey started like a decade back with SSRS back then, SSIS, SSAS, and stuff like that. I've also been heavily involved with data warehousing. These are the two blog posts that I have on the TechNet, which is also about the tool that I wrote, which is a Synapse Azure Synapse Analyzer report. So if you go to Synapse Toolbox, if you're working with Synapse, you probably would be knowing about this tool, which helps you in knowing the health of your data warehouse object in Synapse dedicated pool. So that's about me. Let's start with the session. What I'm this particular session is going to be like 100 200 levelish. I may not. I'll refrain myself from going too deeper into this and try to keep it at a higher level. But if you guys want to go ahead and ask certain deeper questions, please feel free to ask those questions. And as we stop in between the session, we will take on those questions, and I will try to answer it. All those questions as well. For this session, because I'm covering both, like either the Synapse Databricks and Power BI, kind of a landscape of Fabric. So having some understanding of either a Synapse or Databricks or Power BI, if you know about the notebook or about Power BI, how the semantic model works, one of these things or both, it's always helpful. So the agenda is going to be Fabric overview. Just quick overview on this, and then we'll go into talk about Medallion architecture. We'll go through the direct lake details a little bit, and then I'll talk mainly about the topic of this presentation, which is the how do I get this data that I have prepared in my data engineering space? I have prepared it maybe in Synapse, I have prepared it maybe in Databricks, and then how do I get it as soon as possible into Direct Lake and start making use of it? And that's what the presentation is about, and then we will follow with demo and observations from that particular demo. And at the end, if we get some time, we may go into question and answer. So that's about the session. That's about the overview. I just want to see, like, how many, if you can show of hands, like if how many of you have, um, you know, have had opportunity or had been trying your hands on Fabric so far. Just show of hands if you can. Okay, good. And then there are a few who are not, so which is fine. Okay, so that kind of helps me in providing certain background, certain Fabric overview, and then going further into Fabric, right? So let's start on that. Um, okay. So so far, what we have done with Power BI, if you have worked with Power BI, if not, still, it's a SaaS platform, which allows you to make use of your semantic layer, make create your semantic layer on a platform, which allows it to be used, for sharing your reports, creating your models and stuff like that. For a lot of this, you have to kind of create your own pipeline. You have to join all those things. You have to ensure that you are getting data through either Azure Data Factory or through some mechanism, some data integration kind of a tool, and then you use that tool to get that data. Then you prepare that data in some of the data engineering tool sets, and then you create a layer which kind of allows you to consume that data, the consumption layer of that particular data, right? And then you once you have that available either in data warehouse or in Databricks SQL or somewhere, then you create a model, you implement or put certain business logic into it, and create certain aggregations, and then you provide that for consumption through your reports to the end consumers, right? So that's what general flow has been, where you a lot of times there are many different departments involved, and there are many different organizations, and a lot of skill set goes into integrating these products, integrating all these tool sets, and then each tool could be working with another or not, and then what is the compatibility between each, and then doing all the work in the Azure platform or in the platform of your choice, and then creating these connections. With Fabric, what we try to do is we try to expand the SaaS platform that Power BI already has to other workloads as well, right? So we have all the other workloads, the data factories, Synapse data engineering, data science, data warehousing, all these workloads kind of are running on the same platform of Power BI, which provides me one place where I can keep all my data, which is going to be my one lake, right? That is where I'm going to keep that data now, because I'm keeping that data in one lake, which is provisioned automatically with your tenant. It is kind of virtualized across your different regions. So you can think of one lake as like OneDrive of your office, wherein you store your data in OneDrive. You don't know which region, which location it is storing. It tries to keep it locally in your location because it has to kind of uh, go through the governance, the data governance policies and stuff like that. So they have to keep this locality and all those data protection in mind when they are keeping or choosing a location to store that file. But for an end user, it is just OneDrive where I'm uploading that data. So you can think of OneLake in a very similar way, wherein you may have your Power BI capacities or you may have your Fabric capacities now in any of the regions, and you have your storage created in that region, but all that storage kind of connects below, behind the scene, to give you that one virtualized platform of storage that you can use even through a OneLake Explorer, through a tool like a file explorer that we have on Windows, or Windows Explorer that we talk about, right? So similarly, you have OneLake Explorer, you just copy paste into OneLake Explorer, and you have that data uploaded into OneLake. So that's the kind of simpler mechanism that is provided. And all these workloads are working on, because they are working on the same virtualized storage. It also gives me ability to have one copy of that data, right? So I can keep one single copy of this data, and then I have choice of compute. I can use Synapse Data Engineering compute, like a Spark, and use that particular data, which is basically in an open standard format, so that anybody else can use it, and or I can use it with data warehousing, or I can use a Custo cluster, or even the Power BI engine to kind of get this data. Now, because all this data is stored, as long as this data is stored in delta Parquet format, which is the format that is an industry standard and is something which is accepted by Fabric as one single standard for accepting all this data and processing all this data. As long as you have it in delta Parquet format, your compute would automatically detect that particular data as a table, and will be able to access that table and work on that particular copy of table. So you don't have to create multiple copies of that same delta table, or those delta Parquet files multiple times for the consumption layer. Okay. Any questions before I move? I cannot see
I
the
think,
Teams
yeah,
screen, so just wanted to check with you.
there was one question from Adrian. Does
Okay.
anybody know how I can extend the trial period for Microsoft Fabric? Yes.
um, right now, I think it is given for 60 days. 60 days is quite enough to really try your things, but you don't have to, just wait for trial. You can also use Fabric Pago, and that Pago is something you can pause. And when you pause it, you're not charged for that. So you can ensure that you use it when you are doing your trials, when you are trying and testing certain things, and then you can pause it. You can also start at the lowest, you can start at the lowest SKU level, which will allow you to not have that much of utilization. So it starts at single core, right? So F8 is where you can start and move from there. So that's something you can do as well. So those are options that you have. And I think 60 days is more than good enough. I'm sure it was not restricted till now, but I think the clock has started ticking. So if you are seeing that the days are reducing, which means that the clock is ticking now. Cool. So moving on into the Medallion architecture. So when you are getting into this data engineering work, the quite essence of this, which is a very foundational to the entire data engineering practice, is this Medallion architecture, wherein I have different layers. in my framework, right? I use bronze layer mainly for as a landing zone for my raw data. I don't keep any schema over there. The data is not schema bound, right? You just dump all your raw data into the bronze layer, and you have that data available as a landing zone over there. And from then on, you start transforming that data within a more conformed architecture, right? You start providing it a more shape. It starts following those acid properties like atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, so that you move that raw data, you massage that raw data and define a structure around that particular raw data, right? And then you enforce schema around it. That's when it becomes a silver layer. A silver layer, which is nothing but a filtered, cleaned, augmented tables and objects that you have created within your lake, right? And then once you have that clean data, a conformed data available to you, that is when you start applying business level aggregations. You start applying certain business logic to it and then create a gold layer, which is basically what you use for your consumption. That is the one that you would be using for creating your analytical reports, or using it for your further machine learning algorithms, or stuff like that, or training certain algorithms with that. So that's the layer which is what generally consumed. you know then there are multiple options the way you will be consuming it, right? So with Fabric Medallion architecture, we with Fabric we try to stick to a very similar approach, right? With certain enhancements to it, right? So you still have a bronze layer in one lake. You can create a silver layer, you can create a gold layer. You use your notebooks or Spark jobs or data flows to transform your data, to clean your data, to give it a shape. And once you have that shape created, once you have that gold layer available, you can directly access it because the gold layer copy is there in your one lake. You don't need to create another copy in any other analytical platform, right? The Power BI can directly use that particular data from gold layer as that particular copy of that files, or that copy of that table, one single copy, and create reports on top of that. Now, because you are directly accessing that data from the gold layer, it becomes very essential that you have your star schema conformed tables in the gold layer, right? You have your fact table, your dimension tables already prepared, cleaned, and have a good referential integrity between them. You have a primary key, foreign key kind of a relationship, even though you don't have to set up a relationship, but you need to ensure that for every foreign key which is present in my fact table, there is a primary key available in my master table, in my dimension table, right? So that when I'm going to do any direct click on that, I'm going to access that table directly, right? So that's where it is very essential that you have your star schema design implemented and conformed with star schema in your gold layer itself. For our today's discussion, we would be actually, focusing on this particular gold layer and Power BI. Any questions before I move into Direct Lake? Any questions on Medallion architecture?
No, but is it just the same, if I may ask?
Sure.
Like have to have a gold layer in the lake house in your previous picture? Because I'm looking in the industry right now. Some people are making the gold layer on the data warehouse end as well.
Right.
So
So you can make it in data warehouse, you can make it in data, in lake house, you can make it in data bricks as well. And that is what I want to talk about, right? Because everyone would be having their own choice. They have already prepared these things, right? We don't want them to start over again and build your bronze layer, build your silver layer. But what we want to do is we want to tap onto the gold layer that you have already created. And then there are multiple ways that you can tap onto that gold layer. If you are using a data warehouse for that, there would be a different mechanism how you will be tapping it onto that gold layer. But if you are using Databricks or if you are using Synapse Spark for the gold layer, then there is a different mechanism of tapping into that particular data. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So moving on, so far with Power BI, what we have is two major storage modes, right? One is the direct query mode, wherein your data files, your database files, your tables, everything is lying in your relational data store, right? It could be either a SQL or a data warehouse or a Snowflake or any of those database engine which has an engine associated with it, right? So you have such kind of database files available in the storage, and then you use Power BI. You create a model within Power BI, a semantic model, and then you set the storage mode for those tables as direct query, which means whenever any report which is created on top of that model is accessing data, it is sending those queries back to your data warehouse or your relational engine of choice. And then that is doing scans and queries into your database files, doing all the computation and then sending the results back to your semantic layer, right? That's what the direct query mode is. It is real time, but it is slow because you have to send each and every query to your data warehouse, and then everything will depend on how tuned your data warehouse is, what is the network latency in between, and all those factors will start coming in, right? The other mode, which has been there for a long time, which is an import mode. This is how the analysis services tabular model started, right? Back in 2012 or that particular time frame. So basically what it is an in-memory model. It is where you actually load all that data in memory. You get a very fast response time, but at the same time, you have a copy of that data created within your data set, right? Within your semantic model. And then once that copy is created, you are going to load that in memory. So because of that, your response time is fast. But because this is a copy, you also need to ensure that it is refreshed on a timely manner. And there is a regular refresh that is happening for some of those very large data sets, very large semantic models. The refresh time is also a point of concern, or the amount of resources that are utilized for that refresh is also a concern. So you always have to try and balance between these two storage modes. And then there is one more mode that comes somewhere in between, which is a composite with aggregates, which allows you to have a combination of import and direct query and stuff like that. But then you need to have a higher level of skills to manage and maintain such composite model, right? So with direct lake, it's a perfect choice because you're not keeping that particular data in memory, right? Um, and because you are loading that data in memory whenever it is required directly from the Parquet files without having to rely on any relational store, right? It kind of makes it much more faster for all your further reads for that particular data, right? So that's the reason why it would be perfect, right? Now, why we are using Parquet or Delta format? The first reason for that is it is an open source format. It is an open data format. It is kind of a lingua franca for data storage format. So for Databricks or Microsoft Synapse Spark or HD Insight, we tend to rely on Delta Lake and Parquet files. Whereas in Snowflake, if you're creating external tables, those external tables are created in iceberg format, right? So those are the formats that are generally used. Those are industry standards, and that's the reason why we want to be close to the industry standards. We want to be open, using the open data format, without using any proprietary data format. That becomes much more easier for our engines also, all these engines, to interact with the same file format, right? And so we are able to have one single copy. Now, column oriented, the Parquet files, the way the Parquet files work is it works on a columnar structure, right? It kind of creates a column. It processes columns separately. For each column, it will segment those columns and create a row group of those columns, and process those columns. So it has already done all that work for me. It has already created those columnar structure. Now that is what is a structure that Direct Lake also uses, right? And so it becomes much more easier for us, or even for that matter, data warehouse uses a column store index. And that column store index is nothing but a columnar structure. That's the format which allows you to have a greatest compression and faster queries. And then the other thing is we try to use a reordering algorithm on top of that Delta Parquet file, which further enhances compression. I'm going to talk about the performance differences, if possible, at the end of it, how the reorder enhances the overall performance for your data set, for your semantic model. So with all that said, should I really use direct lake mode? Because import and direct query mode aren't going anywhere, right? Those are still there. And if you are using them successfully today, you can continue using them as long as you are not limited by memory or for refreshes or anything of that sort. You can keep using your import mode, or you can keep using your direct query mode if the given latency is or given response time is okay with your overall SLAs within your organizations, right? The best practices that you follow with direct query mode or with import mode in terms of star schema and stuff like that, are having a referential integrity and stuff like that, are still applicable to direct click mode as well. It's not changing anywhere, right? And then what benefits do I get with direct click mode? Why do we call it that it is a perfect mode, right? So three reasons I'll talk about. One is one copy, which I already talked about earlier, right? So think about about an example wherein I have created this particular gold layer available to me. Now, on that gold layer, I need to create 5 different semantic models, right? I can either go direct query and point to that, or if I have to create an import model, then I have to have 5 different models created, which are pointing to the same table, right? And then all models may have different set of security. It may be because it is from different departments or for different security that you are creating these 5 models. So you have to have one copy each. Each copy has to get refreshed. Each copy has to pull that data, get refreshed. So you're using resources, you're using time for that particular work, right? To do that refreshes. Then 5 semantic models with different fact tables. Let's say you have 5 different fact tables, but the same dimension. You are again creating copy of those dimensions in each of those semantic models. So we try and avoid that when you are using one lake because of the one copy. The other thing is refresh cost. You obviously you tend to you because you are not loading all that data, because you are not creating a copy of that data. You don't need to really refresh data. All you are doing is you are refreshing your schema. If you are making certain changes to the schema, you are changing the schema in your models, in your semantic model. And the efficient memory use. This is something I did not talk about earlier. So with direct link mode or with large models, this is a new enhancements that has happened with the premium Power BI Premium is it allows to load data only when it is required. So If you have not queried your model at all, it will not load that model in memory. Now, when you query that model, it will try to find out what that query is and what columns you are asking from that particular query. And then it will only load those columns into memory instead of loading the entire model into memory. Unlike in your shared model, if you are using a non-premium data set, um, or a data set with a small file storage format. In that case, what happens is whenever you are querying that particular model, the first query, it is going to actually load the entire model. If it is 10 gigs, 5 gigs, it is going to, excuse me, it is going to load the entire model into the memory, right? With large storage format or with direct click mode. And this is something came in through the direct click mode is you are loading only the columns which are required by that query. So you are slowly moving and slowly hydrating your memory as and when the queries are coming up, which also means that your cold cache, that there would be difference in your cold run and warm run that I'll talk about a little bit later. But this is what makes you the efficient use of memory. If you're not using 10 columns out of your fact table, out of let's say 15 columns, and you are just using 10 columns out of those 15 columns, those 5 other columns will never be loaded into memory. You don't require those, so it is still it is there if there is any random query that is coming up, but it is not loaded into memory upfront. So how does and what does direct click solve? Um, in traditional import mode refreshes, most of the sources are row based. So you pull data from your relational data store, you read the millions of rows. Now, once you have read those rows, you will try to, set it into columns. You will set the columnar data, and then you will start compressing that information using the Vertipack engine. That's what generally a refresh cycle in brief will happen, right? With Parquet format, you already have done this particular work. You already have that file available in columnar compressed format. So we can just go ahead and use it. Right. So that's where it brings up the benefits of it. Any questions so far with the direct click?
So we have one question in Q&A
Yeah,
asked by Ravi. So no need to have analysis server anymore. Just a direct lake replace that. Uh,
that's right.
yeah.
You don't need to have analysis services anymore, right? You can use Power BI because Power BI engine and analysis services engine is the same. Is the underlying engine works the same. The code almost is same, right? There were feature differences between analysis services and Power BI, but those feature gaps have also been closed. So, almost all features which were there traditionally in analysis services, all those features are now available with Power BI engine. So including your query scale out, features like advanced features like query scale out or other things, everything is available with Power BI, including backup restore and stuff like that.
Cool.
Cool. Moving on, so let's move on and let's find out how do we get. So we talked about the medallion architecture, we talked about the gold layer, we talked about how we can have that gold layer and use that gold layer. Assume that this is my one lake fabric workspace that I have, right? And then I have my either a Spark or Azure Databricks engine running in my Azure, right? Now this is gonna write data locally in their local table format, right? When you have a gold layer, all you can do is you can point that particular code layer to be available in ADLS Gen 2 layer, because that is where it will be writing that data into, right? And then I can create a shortcut to that ADLS Gen 2 layer. And that shortcut will sit in my one lake, right? What does it mean? It doesn't mean that I'm going to copy the entire data into my shortcut. It is just a link which kind of gives me that connection from my one lake all the way into my ADLS Gen 2 layer. And then internally, it will try to use some caching mechanisms, some performance optimizations to ensure that it is able to get that data sooner the next time you call it and all that stuff. That it will try to do. But essentially, it is just creating this kind of a connection into your ADLS Gen 2 layer, into your copy of that, the physical copy of that Parquet files that you have on ADLS Gen 2, right? Uh, or, so this is one way you will be able to access that data. You will be able to access that gold layer directly without creating a copy, without moving that data from your one lake. Now, once it is available in one lake, any of these engines that are sitting on top would be able to access this data, including Power BI, right? The other way of getting this data into one lake is using the DFS APIs. What does it mean is when you are using Azure Databricks, from Azure Databricks, because Azure Databricks supports DFS endpoints, because Azure Databricks allows you to write to ADLS Gen 2, OneLake, as I said, behind the scene is working on ADLS Gen 2 APIs, right? It is the same ADLS Gen 2 hierarchical storage, which is sitting, below that OneLake virtualized layer. Now, because it is the same virtualized layer, the same APIs also apply to your one lake. And because of that, you can use a similar access mechanism. And with one lake, they have made it even more easier to do it by accessing your one lake endpoints by using a workspace and the lakehouse name, which we will I'll show you shortly. But what you generally do is you'll just point the way you point your endpoint to your ADLS Gen 2. Instead of that, you're pointing that within your notebook to one lake storage directly. And once you do that and you do data frame.write operation, or spark.write operation, it automatically writes that information into one lake, provided you have certain prerequisites that I'll talk about when you have to do this DFS API route. And then once you have that data, you can again go ahead and create further shortcuts to that data. I mean, you can extend shortcuts into another shortcut. So you can have multiple levels of shortcuts created as well, right? So all those things are now possibilities that you have. So you can have one shortcut sitting in one single workspace, like you can have one shortcut sitting in HR workspace, but then you create another shortcut which sits in a different workspace altogether, and use that, which I'll show you, shortly. Any questions on how do we get access? Because from here on, I'm moving into the demo section. Cool.
No, it's more
Cool.
on the capacity end right
Yeah.
now on the chat, but I
Yeah.
see that's calls for another session. So just give you a little bit brief here.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So Avin has a question that how do you evaluate your recommended SKU size, the percentage use of the CU in the trial capacity? Let's say you have 5% ingestion, transformation operation, like what would it correspond to as, recommended capacity? So I think he's using 5% of ingestion in transformation and operations. So based on the trial capacity, how do you, based on the capacity metrics, how do you evaluate which capacity suits better for you?
Yes, and I think, yeah, it really warrants a deeper, a separate dedicated discussion on capacity only. I mean, I'm happy to do such kind of session as well, but
Yeah.
yeah, it really warrants that. I may be able to go into that, but right now I cannot. I'll paste a link after this. I'm not sure if you have seen that, but it is about all you need to know about capacity utilization, something like that. There is a blog which is present in Fabric blog about the capacity that explains how you can look at those capacity units and what you need to look for and how you can translate that capacity units utilization, CU's utilizations, basically.
By the way, we have one more question from Vijay, which
Yeah.
is related to your previous topic only. Is the shortcuts
Mhm.
for the is the shortcuts are available for entire ADLS Gen 2 container or each file in the container? So
Yeah,
most
that's a
likely
good
it's the
question. Yeah, that's a good question. So shortcuts are generally created for a specific folder. Okay. Now, if that folder is a delta table folder, because when you create a delta table, when you create a Parquet delta file or a table, external table, all it does is it creates a folder, and underneath that folder you have all those partition folders, and in each partition folder you will have those Parquet files within it, right? So your granularity of your shortcut is going to be that particular folder, which could be associated with a table, with a delta table. Okay, that's the granularity you can go up to on your shortcut. If you are doing that shortcut in the file section, so there are two sections. This it's a good question. There are two sections where you can create a shortcut. You can create a shortcut within tables, or you can create shortcuts within files. I'll let me actually move on to demo, and then I'll show it to you as well on where exactly it will sit. It's kind of covered in demo. But if it is not, and if you still have question, do let me know, and we can take it at the end if that is okay.
Yep, sounds awesome.
Cool. Okay, so pretty simple demo. I'm just going to get data from Databricks into Fabric Lakehouse through shortcut. This is where I'll also try to answer his question. And then using that shortcut, we will create the semantic model and a report with a simple counters, right? And then we'll talk about certain refresh settings that you have on your semantic layer and how it is affecting your refreshability of that data that you are doing in an incremental fashion, right? How do you incrementally load that data, and when that data should be changed in the report? So we will start looking into that. So I'll just um, move to my presentation, and I hope this is working. Okay. Can you guys see my screen for
Yep, we can see
Databricks?
Databricks. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. So all I'm doing right now is step one, which is basically getting data from Databricks, preparing data to get that data into one lake, right? And if I have storage explorers to explorer whenever it opens. Um, okay, so this is done. Run cell. So this is where I'm actually, setting my secrets to, to my ADLS Gen 2 account, right? This is the ADLS Gen 2 storage that I have, and under that storage, I'm accessing using OAuth. Once I have, this is my local table, fact sales small. Okay,
Uh,
so
Sorry,
I'm
Sanjay. Just to, if you go back a little bit in the notebook
sure.
previously, is
Yeah.
this the service principal that has been used here, or this client ID secret?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So I'm using a service principal here to access the ADLS Gen 2, and I'm using the client ID and secret to access my Databricks, access my ADLS storage from Databricks, right? So Databricks is going to use this configuration setting when it is going to access this endpoint.
So I have to give that service principal access to my workspace, which I'm
You
where I'm.
need to provide
Okay.
contributor access on your storage for that service principal.
Cool.
Yes,
Cool.
that's a good question. Yeah. Okay. I did click on it. I don't know why it is not opening up. Okay. So this is a small table. It has around 12,000 rows. So I'll just run it once again just to showcase and see if I'm having access and everything. So it should get executed and should show me 12,000 rows here. Yep, these are. And then what I'm doing over here is I'm writing that data into my ADLS Gen 2. This is where I'm going to use the authentication configuration that I have set, right? So I've set it over here as a configuration, and I'm going to use that authentication mechanism, that authorization mechanism, to access my ADLS Gen 2 storage. Under that ADLS Gen 2 storage, WWI is my container where I'm writing that data. Under that WWI container, I have tables folder. And in that tables folder, fact sales small ext is the folder that it is going to create. And it is going to detect that folder as a table, as an unmanaged table in my Databricks platform. It is pretty similar. You will do it in Synapse Spark as well, right? The steps are more or less same in Synapse Spark as well. Okay, so once I do this, it should be okay. Good. I have the Storage Explorer getting open. Oh, uh, I can't wait for that. But let's start this. Um, Now, while this is happening, I'll also show you what we have on Power BI side, right? So in Power BI, I have this workspace. You guys can see it?
Yep. Yep. We
Okay,
can
cool.
see.
Okay, awesome. So I have this WWI Lakehouse created already. Okay. If you don't know how we can create it, you can just go here, you click on Lakehouse and you give it a name. Let's say my demo Lakehouse, and then I can create that and it will get created in that particular workspace. Okay. Once I create that lake house, it automatically tries to create two other default artifacts. One is your data set, and another is your SQL endpoint for that particular lake house. Okay. Now, under your lake house, and this is what I was talking about, under your lake house, you have two different options. You have two ways of creating a shortcut. You can create a shortcut under table section. Okay, or you can create a shortcut under file section. Okay. The difference between the two is if you are creating a shortcut under table section, you need to ensure that you are creating a shortcut to a delta table, right? Just like in our earlier step, in another window, if you see, the way I'm writing this particular data, it has completed that particular step. But the way this is where I've written all my data in that in that storage, right? So this is a delta table that I have, and all because it is a delta table, I can go ahead and use shortcut from table section. Okay. But had it not been a delta table, or had it been some other file systems like CSV file, or any other file type, image file, or any other file type that you want to get access through one lake, you can then create a shortcut from file section. Okay, so two things. If you are using normal files, want to get access to those normal files either from ADLS Gen2 or any other place, you can use file section. If you already have a gold layer, or if you already have a defined table structure or a delta table within your ADLS Gen2 or any other storage layer like S3 or other things, you can then create a shortcut from your tables. So this is what I'm going to do right now. And then I'm going to use ADLS Gen 2. It sometimes takes some time. Okay, another thing that you may want to understand is this is where you will be able to see where exactly your storage is located, right? So when you try to create a shortcut, it tells you that your lake house is located in West Central US region. And the data source through this shortcut will be processed in the same region. Okay, so this tells you whether you are going across the region with your shortcut or not. Okay. Uh, Let me try to. Not sure why it is taking time. Let me try to jump onto another lake house. I just need to be patient. Okay. And then I'm going to put my ADLS Gen 2 DFS endpoint. Okay. So this is not a blob endpoint. This is a DFS endpoint that I'm using for shortcut. Because I have already created a shortcut, so it automatically detected that connection. So I'm going next. And then I can give it a name, maybe sales. And I go to WWI. And under WWI, where do I have it? I have it under tables, under this location, right? So let's try and do that. Then create. So it is able to create this shortcut. And it is able to also detect it as a table. Now it is able to detect it as a table because you have it as a delta Parquet format over there as a delta table. And what we can do is while it is reading it, we can also go ahead and create a semantic model on top of it.
Just to double click a bit
Just to,
on, yeah, while it's fetching the schema. Uh, I think in file section, you also can create shortcuts on subfolder level, right? Which
yes,
is
yes. You can create shortcuts on subfolder levels as well. You can create folders, you can create shortcuts under subfolders as well. Okay, while this is happening, I can just quickly show you. Okay, and I give it a name. I pick fact cell schema, confirm. Okay. Pick this. So while that is happening, I just want to go into quickly the next section. Okay, good. It has done it. Okay, cool. So all I'm going to do is just create new measure, make it as count rows, sales, and then create a new report out of that.
It's most likely the internet, right? Or
It is, I think so. Because a lot of things I'm doing and I'm working from home right now, and that's probably the reason why it is further slowing down. Should have gone. Anyway, so this is a simple card visual, and I'm using this measure over there, which should show me 12K. Yes, makes sense. So this is something which is coming from it. Now, what I'm going to do over here quickly is I'm going to have additional data loaded into the table. So I'm creating another version of this or another copy of this additional data, the same fact table, another 12,000 rows, right? And then I'm adding those 12,000 rows again into the table. But before I do that, I just want to go back, go to the data set and want to show you the property about the refreshes and the setting about that refresh. So if you go to refresh, you have this keep your data lake data up to date setting, and it is by default it is turned on. What it means is, as it explains over here, the Power BI, whenever there is a change that is happening. So right now it is just 12,000 rows, right? Now once I move another 12,000 rows. Let's see what happens over there, right? And then we will come back to this particular setting and discuss more about this setting. So coming back to my Databricks, and I'm appending. If you see here, I'm appending data into my existing table. So run cell should take a minute. What it does basically as it is executing is that setting will allow Power BI engine to try and detect the changes in the data, right? And whenever there is a change, it will automatically refresh the model. Or whenever there is a change in schema, it will automatically refresh that model. So that's how it should ideally be able to show me the 12,000 plus 12,000, which is 24,000 rows over here. And that's what we are just trying to do if it is going to show it to me or not. So the command completed in 40 seconds, which means it has appended the rows. We can just quickly check whether the rows are appended or not, right? Um, reading that external table, we do see it is 24,000 rows. So let's go back and then try and do refresh here. And we do see. Make sense? So here we have not made any change to any of the data in my Power BI or in the fabric. All I have done is I have created a link to the direct link, and that through the direct link to that shortcut, right? And it is just using that particular shortcut, which is accessing the data, going back to the presentation. It is accessing that data from that particular shortcut, right? It is using this particular layer of shortcuts to access that data. Everybody is with me. And after this, so the refresh setting that we talked about, you may want to disable it at times when you want all jobs to complete. So there could be reasons why you want to have all other tables, everything is completed before it automatically detects and showcases new data, right? So because you want to have some logical business consistency in your report. So you may want to do it in a scheduled fashion, or you may want to invoke it using an API or other things. So that's how you will be able to control that refresh as well if you want to, but otherwise it automatically detects it and does it. The other important thing that you have understood is, that there is a higher upstream dependency. So you need to ensure that your data is stored in a star schema in a gold layer, right? Right when you are creating it within the Databricks platform itself or within the Spark platform itself. So you need to ensure that you have it in that particular layer. And then just one part that I want to talk about with respect to cold run. This is a comparison between different mechanisms. So the one that we tried was this, which was completely remote, completely non-optimized. It when I was doing internal testing, it was taking 12 seconds, but right now it took maybe probably more than that. And the rows that I was trying to access was 145 million rows table. So it was not the small table. The small table was just for the end-to-end demo, but there is another table which I have, which has 145 million rows. So that was taking 12 seconds with a remote non-optimized. But if I do create a DFS endpoint, then in that case, it was taking 9 seconds. The best way of getting the output from it is doing a vopter optimization on that particular table, which means that if I go into my lakehouse, I go to that table, not this one, yeah, this one. If I go to that table and go to properties, sorry, maintenance, then in maintenance, you have something called reorder optimization. Now, once you do that optimization, the performance drastically changes, right? Because it is much faster than that. However, you cannot do a reorder on a shortcut, which is the remote one, which is sitting in ADLS Gen 2 storage. But you can create a local copy and do a reorder on top of that. Or when you write back into your local copy in one lake, it automatically does a reorder. So those are the ways you will be able to do reordering on that particular data. So questions? Any questions that you have? I know we are way above our time,
Oh,
but
yeah, no worries. So that's why we focus on one session. So if even though we go a little bit over the time, we still get the topic covered. Uh, but really, it was a really great session, and I hope we have answered everybody's question. Just going through the chat if I skipped anything. sounds everything. Yeah, but just one question from my end though.
Sure.
How does the schema evolution happen in direct lakes? So, for example, I have one custom data set. I'm
Hmm.
using it for two different reports, and I have now wanted to enable that in my direct lake model. I wanted to enable one column for that data set. I probably have to create another custom data set where I don't want to show that column. But if I add more columns into my lake house, would that automatically updates the columns in my custom data sets, uh,
So
or do
whenever
I
you
have?
do a refresh, yeah, so whenever you do a refresh, so unless and until you are doing a refresh, it is not going to make any change to your existing model.
Okay,
Okay. Only when you are going to do a refresh, it is going to do, we call it as a framing internally, right? So the framing is the word we use to kind of do detect that particular schema change, right? Or data change. So only when you are going to do a refresh, it is going to do that framing, find out the schema changes, and then use it. Now, the setting that I talked about, that setting does it automatically. I don't exactly know the schedule on what it does, but it automatically keeps polling, I believe. Um, or you can take a control and you can do it. Like whenever you have made change to your columns and stuff, then you can come back over here, refresh your model, existing model, which should pick that particular data. If not, if you're making the addition of columns or stuff like that, then in that case, you can go back into the model management and edit that model management from model editing experience as well.
okay, that answers it. We had one question just popped up on Q&A asked
Yeah.
by Vijay. Which tables are best suited for V order? Is it facts or dimension, or is it based on the size of the tables?
Um, so you can do reorder all tables, but generally dimension tables, which are smaller one, may not yield very high benefits. Like for example, here, let me actually go to another workspace that I have. Click demo workspace. And in that particular workspace, if you see, I do have those tables. And I have other dimension tables like city and date and customer, which are also coming from Databricks, by the way, right? These are coming from same ADLS Gen 2 location that I was using. So these tables I have not even created a local copy of this, but I created a local copy of this sales table into sales local table. Okay. The performance differences that I was showcasing you was against this particular data set that I have, wherein one table is coming from DFS endpoint, one is a local table, and the one which is a remote table from a shortcut. Okay. So the real benefit will come for the fact table. The larger the table, the better the compression that you have for that fact table. And if you are planning to access rest of the data from shortcut, you can do that because it is just going to load all that in memory when you are going to execute your first query. So let me just go here and bring this one here. So earlier when I had executed this, I had nothing available over here because I have not executed any command onto this particular model, right? It is a remote model, which has a remote shortcut, the sales table. So if you look at, and generally you will be looking at this is resident and temperature column. Now these are certain advanced things, but because you have asked question, I wanted to, and I anyways wanted to cover this, but then we ran out of time. But generally these are the two columns which will tell you whether you have any data in memory or not, right? A blank means it is not in memory right now. So if I go and take this report here, And let me just to go to optimize, performance analyzer, start recording. And then I just switch to my page 2. And it is connecting to that particular remote table, 145 million rows, right? And it is pulling data, which is basically a quantity and by segment, customer segment, sales territory. So it has completed. Now let's go back and look at the same execute this query once again, this DMB once again. And now if you see, there are 4 columns which are having the dictionary size, which has the data residency also over here. Make sense? Now, because the query is about, now if you look at the report, it is the sales territory and total quantity, correct? So all I'm doing is I'm pulling city, sales territory, and then sales total quantity, which means I have to have city key from both the tables. So sales territory, column 1, total quantity, column 2, which is sum of quantity. So quantity is column 2, right? And then city key column from both the tables, which makes it as 4 different columns being loaded into memory. Make sense? So
Yep.
it will load only when there is a query that is going against it. And city is not locally stored in my one leg. It is coming from shortcut. So and that's the reason why if you see the first cold run is taking a longer time. If I refresh the visual, now it should be coming faster. Now it is a warm run, right? It is already there in memory. It doesn't have to go and read it again. As long as that data is accessed frequently, it will stay in memory. It's a similar kind of a database concept, right? The way you have lazy writer in your SQL database and stuff like that. So if you want to keep it in cache, you keep accessing it, right? And if the cold run is not a problem for you, you can keep it in shortcut also. Like here, it took 19 seconds, but if 19 seconds on a very first execution is not an issue for you, right? Then in that case, you can keep it in shortcut. You don't even need to create a local table. But if you are going to do kind of a productionized version and you want to have, multiple users access this particular table, then in that case, yes, in that case, I can go ahead and, use this local table, the same local copy that I had created, and then I can just, if I go and run performance analyzer here as well, and then go to my page 2, it should come sooner than what it was there. As I said, it is trying to be, ensure that I'm wrong. it is trying to prove me wrong, but ideally in all my tests I have seen it is working faster. Now the one reason why it may not is because it is basically trying to load the entire model for the first time, right? It is so I had completely refreshed that model and was completely off. So I have to load that model and then do it. But if I try to do it once again, it should be faster here, even faster than what it was earlier with others.
That explains. Yeah. Cool.
So as long as you don't really need it to be local, you don't really need we optimized and first read performance is not a criteria for you, you can keep it in shortcut. Cool. Yeah,
Sounds.
thank you very much for this, and that
Yep.
kind of concludes it.
Yep. I want to thank everyone for attending as well, and express my gratitude to you, Sanjay, for taking time to present this to our group. These insights are extremely valuable, to be honest, and the insight perspective on direct lake is very invaluable opportunity for our community. And I hope we
Thank you.
have the chance to have you back in future as well, as Microsoft is continuing innovating on this. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm planning to actually go deep dive onto this particular section that I just briefly talked about. But yeah,
Yep.
absolutely would love to do that.
Cool. And I'll stay in touch with you so that we can
Absolutely,
arrange
anytime.
this once more time.
Yep.
Yeah,
You can connect with me on LinkedIn and all that stuff. So
sure. And
thank you
please
very
reach
much.
out. Yeah, to everybody, I'm saying that please reach out to Sanjay
Yes,
on LinkedIn. I'm just gonna
I'm
put his
available on
link.
LinkedIn.
Uh,
Yeah. I do have Twitter handle, but I don't really often go into Twitter. But LinkedIn is something I always keep watching, keep observing, keep following. So yeah,
Cool.
I'm more active on LinkedIn than Twitter.
I'm gonna paste your link, LinkedIn, on here. And
Yes.
with that, that concludes everything. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. See you
Thanks.
guys.
See you.
Have a good evening for those who are in Norway. I know it is quite late for you guys.
Yeah. Thanks.
See you.
Bye.